In 2021, motorhome owners across the United States were stranded on the side of the highway, not because their engines failed, not because they ran out of fuel. They were stranded because a sensor the size of your thumb told the onboard computer that a fluid they had just topped off was somehow missing. The computer believed the sensor, and the computer cut their engine power to 5 miles per hour on a busy interstate. These were not cheap vehicles. These were $200,000 diesel pushers with less than 50,000 miles on the odometer. And their owners sat on the shoulder of the road for hours, sometimes days, waiting for a tow truck to drag them to a repair shop that was booked out for weeks. The part that failed was a diesel exhaust fluid sensor worth $300. The repair bill, with towing, diagnostics, and labor, was easily north of $3,000. And the irony that is making savvy buyers rethink everything they know about the RV market is this. A 20-year-old motorhome with zero emissions equipment would have driven right past them without a single warning light. There is a quiet revolution happening in the used RV market right now, and it is being driven by people who understand one simple truth. The most reliable diesel motorhome you can buy in 2026 was built before the year 2007. That is not nostalgia talking. That is engineering. To understand why, you have to understand what happened to diesel engines in the United States starting in December of 2000. That is when the EPA signed into law the most aggressive emissions standards ever imposed on heavy-duty diesel engines. The regulation was phased in between 2007 and 2010, and it demanded a 95% reduction in nitrogen oxide emissions and an 80 to 90% reduction in particulate matter. Those numbers sound impressive, and the environmental benefits are real. But to achieve them, engine manufacturers had to bolt an entirely new system onto every diesel engine sold in America. That system is what mechanics now call the after-treatment system, and it is the single most expensive, failure-prone, and complicated addition ever made to the diesel motorhome. Here is how it works. Starting with 2007 model year engines, manufacturers were required to install a diesel particulate filter known as DPF. The DPF captures soot from the exhaust and traps it inside a ceramic honeycomb structure. Over time, that soot builds up and has to be burned off in a process called regeneration. During regeneration, the exhaust temperature inside the filter climbs to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This process is supposed to happen automatically while you are driving at highway speed. But motorhomes are not long-haul trucks. They spend far more time idling in campgrounds, creeping through small towns, and sitting in storage for months. That usage pattern is the worst possible scenario for a DPF because the filter never gets hot enough to clean itself. When the soot builds up past a critical threshold and the system cannot regenerate on its own, the engine computer forces the vehicle into what is called derate mode. Derate mode progressively reduces your engine power, first to 60%, then to 40%, and in some systems, all the way down to 5 miles per hour. You are now piloting a 40-foot, 30,000-pound vehicle at walking speed on the shoulder of an interstate highway. That is not a theoretical scenario. That is a documented safety crisis that prompted the EPA itself to propose new rules on engine derating. Then came the second wave in 2010. To meet the final nitrogen oxides reduction targets, manufacturers added selective catalytic reduction, called SCR. SCR requires a chemical called diesel exhaust fluid, known as DF. DF is a mixture of urea and deionized water that gets sprayed into the exhaust stream to neutralize nitrogen oxides. A motorhome with a typical 13-gallon DEF tank will consume that supply roughly every 3,500 to 4,000 miles. If your DF runs out, or if any one of the sensors in the system malfunctions, the engine computer assumes you are polluting and once again forces the vehicle into derate. This is the part that enrages owners. In most cases where motorhomes were derated on the highway, the DF tanks were full and the emissions systems were functioning perfectly. The failures were almost entirely caused by faulty sensors giving false readings to the computer. Your engine was clean, your fluid was full, but a $300 sensor told a $200,000 motorhome to shut down, and you had no way to override it. You could not even use a standard scan tool to reset the codes. You needed a dealer-level diagnostic computer, which meant a flatbed tow to a Cummins or Freightliner service center that might not have an opening for 3 weeks. Now, let us talk about what this system costs to maintain over the life of a motorhome. A diesel particulate filter replacement on a Class A diesel pusher runs between $3,000 and $8,000 for the part alone. If you need the full after-treatment system replaced, including the diesel particulate filter, the diesel oxidation catalyst, the selective catalytic reduction catalyst, and the associated sensors and wiring, the bill can reach from $10,000 to $20,000. The diesel exhaust fluid system adds its own layer of consumable cost, and the tank heater control valve for diesel exhaust fluid is a known failure point that can overheat the fluid inside the tank and trigger a cascade of fault codes. The American Trucking Association estimates that after-treatment and emissions-related repairs account for roughly 13% of total maintenance costs for Class 8 vehicles. That is a staggering number when you consider that these systems have nothing to do with making the engine run. They exist solely to treat the exhaust. Now, compare all of that to a motorhome built before 2007. A pre-emissions diesel pusher equipped with a Cummins ISC 8.3-liter engine or a Caterpillar 3126 has none of this equipment. No diesel particulate filter, no selective catalytic reduction, no diesel exhaust fluid tank, no regeneration cycles, no derate mode, no sensors that can strand you on the highway over a false reading. The engine produces power, the exhaust goes out the tailpipe, and you drive. Simplicity. The Cummins 8.3-liter in particular is legendary in the motorhome community. It was used in everything from school buses to medium-duty trucks to Class A diesel pushers throughout the late 1990s and the early 2000s. Earlier versions used a mechanical fuel system that is virtually bulletproof. Later versions used the Cummins CAPS injection system and eventually high-pressure common rail, both of which are well understood and widely serviceable. These engines are designed to run for 300,000 to 500,000 miles before needing a major overhaul. Most motorhome examples have less than 100,000 miles on them because recreational vehicles simply do not accumulate mileage the way commercial trucks do. The Caterpillar 3126, which evolved into the C7 in 2004, is another engine that pre-emissions buyers seek out. Caterpillar exited the on-highway diesel market entirely in 2008 rather than invest in the after-treatment systems the EPA required. That decision tells you everything you need to know. One of the largest and most capable engine manufacturers in the world looked at the cost and complexity of the new emissions rules and decided it was not worth it. The pre-emissions CAT engines they left behind are now considered some of the most desirable power plants in the used motorhome market precisely because they will never be made again. This brings us to the financial equation that is making smart buyers choose a 2005 diesel pusher over a 2025 model. A well-maintained pre-emissions Class A motorhome with a Cummins 8.3 or a Cat 3126 on a Freightliner or Spartan chassis can be purchased today for $25,000 to $60,000, depending on the brand, length, and condition. A comparable new diesel pusher from a Thor or Forest River subsidiary will cost you $180,000 to $300,000 or more. But here is the number that matters. The new unit will lose 30 to 40% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. That means your $250,000 motorhome is worth $150,000 to $175,000 within 2 years. Meanwhile, the pre-emissions unit has already taken its depreciation hit decades ago. A 2004 Monaco Diplomat with an 8.3 Cummins that sells for $40,000 today will likely sell for a similar price 3 to 5 years from now, assuming it is maintained. You are buying an asset that has reached the bottom of its depreciation curve and is now holding steady, supported by a growing community of buyers who specifically seek pre-emissions chassis. There is one critical caveat to this strategy, and it is something every buyer must understand. When you buy a 20-year-old motorhome, the engine and drivetrain are often the least of your concerns. The house portion of the vehicle, the walls, the roof, the plumbing, and the electrical system is where the real risk lies. You must inspect for delamination, roof leaks, water damage to the subfloor, and aging rubber seals. You must check the condition of the tires, the house batteries, and the generator hours. A pre-emissions engine will outlast the house it is mounted in if the house is not properly maintained. That is why the smartest buyers in this market are not just looking for the right engine. They are looking for the right owner. A single-owner coach with full service records, stored under cover, and used regularly is worth twice as much as a neglected unit with low miles that sat in a field for 5 years. The pre-emissions loophole is not a hack. It is not a workaround. It is a rational response to an industry that has added enormous complexity and reliability concerns to the diesel motorhome, without a proportional increase in reliability for the end user. The environmental regulations serve an important purpose, and cleaner air benefits everyone. But the implementation of those regulations on vehicles that drive 5,000 to 10,000 miles per year and sit idle for months at a time has created a maintenance nightmare that punishes the very consumers it was never designed for. Long-haul trucks drive 100,000 miles a year and keep their diesel particulate filters hot. Motorhomes do not. The systems were designed for trucks, not for your retirement vehicle. If you want to explore the country without worrying about a sensor stranding you in rural Nevada, do what the mechanics are doing. Buy the engine they trust. Buy the chassis that was built before the complexity. Buy the motorhome that starts every time and does not need a dealer-level computer to clear a phantom fault code. The smartest money in the RFI market right now is not being spent on LED accent lighting and touchscreen dashboards. It is being spent on a 20-year-old Cummins that just needs diesel fuel and an oil change to take you anywhere you want to go.